Housebroken Clothing and ClassicSci-Fi.com have joined forces to present the ultimate in classic science fiction-inspired apparel. All shirts are hand-printed here in the USA. Everyone loves the luxurious feel of these shirts. The prints are lightweight with soft inks, making them the perfect combination of style and comfort. Each shirt is unique and meticulously cared for during production. They are then inspected, approved, and signed by the artist himself. All this plus free shipping. They've got Frankenstein shirts, Night of the Living Dead shirts, UFO shirts, all sorts of shirts. They're great shirts. Check out the shirts today at ClassicSci-Fi.com. Hello and welcome to the Smug Film Podcast. I'm your host, Cody Clark. With me today is John D'Amico.
Hi.
And Jenna Ipcar.
Hi, Mr. Deltoid.
And today's topic is kind of a convoluted one. It's kind of a double topic. First, we're going to tackle movies that we like by directors that we typically dislike. And then we're going to conquer movies we dislike by directors we usually like. So, kind of a double-edged, dialectic mirror topic. Right, guys?
Yeah, mirrors.
Did I use the word dialectic correctly?
I think he did.
Wow. All right, so I think the first one that really comes to mind for me, we could tackle that right off the bat, is Spring Breakers. Because for the longest time, I was not a Harmony Korine guy, or Korine, rather. Never liked Gummo, Kids, Ken Park, Julian Donkey Boy, whatever the other ones are, if there are other ones. Mr. Lonely. He just never... I always thought of him as like this kind of fake filmmaker. Like I never really took him seriously. The only work that I liked that he ever did up until Spring Breakers was his appearances on Letterman. If you go on YouTube and you look at those are fucking hilarious. Like he's just taking the piss and Letterman is enjoying it too. And it's just these great little classic kind of Letterman-ish interviews. So that was all I really liked of him, and I didn't expect much from Spring Breakers, but I fucking love the hell out of that movie. I think it works perfectly. I think the editing is what makes it really sing. The problem I had with a lot of his other work, well, basically all of his other work, was that the editing, I just couldn't follow it. It just didn't flow in the way that I guess it flows for him when he looks at them. I know you're a big fan of that one too, John.
Yeah, I really don't have a strong opinion on any of his other films. I like Julian Donkey Boy because I like Herzog in it.
Right.
I think that's a great little performance. But like as a movie, it's fine. They're all fine. Spring Breakers really does feel like a big jump. Not even just for him, just for that level of mid-low budget filmmaking. I mean, it was so ambitious visually in a way that I don't think any of his others quite were.
And it looked great. I mean, I didn't see the movie. I saw the trailer.
Yeah. How was the trailer? The trailer
looked at it very, I kind of avoided it because I thought it was going to be this sort of aesthetic that I just don't like, that, TMZ, Perez Hilton, which I think is really what he's lampooning potentially. But I don't know. There's something about it that just kind of turned me off. But in retrospect, I kind of feel like I missed out.
I had that reaction initially to the trailer and the spots for it, and I didn't know what to anticipate. I remember the earlier reviews I saw, people were complaining that like it didn't make sense, so I just assumed like, oh, that's just a marketing campaign and really it's just another Harmony Korine movie. It's just all over the place. Then I saw it and I was like, this flows immaculately well. This is just like expert filmmaking on a level that I didn't expect from him.
It's structured the way Malick structures stuff at his best, where the editing isn't linear, but it's sort of driven by the emotional core of the scene, which is something Korine's always had trouble with before. There's really no strong emotional core to his movies, I think, before this one. And the thing about Spring Breakers that was really cool was I don't think where like Bling Ring was terrible and Spring Breakers was good was Bling Ring was trying to be a parody of that kind of lifestyle. Spring Breakers wasn't. I think Spring Breakers was an equal parts parody and celebration of it. It sort of like just lived in that lavish, rotting, pre-fall kind of a new money lifestyle. It actually reminded me of Fitzgerald, the way he was in the kind of new money pre-depression lifestyle and criticizing it at the same time.
I disagree about Bling Ring, though, because Bling Ring, like, they shot in Paris Hilton's house. I mean, with Sofia Coppola, who herself is essentially the same kind of person these kids were originally stealing from, all these sort of Hollywood people they brought in. I mean, that was actually a movie from, I don't really like Sofia Coppola at all, and I thought that was actually an interesting movie. Maybe not great, but kind of got its point across. But again, I didn't see this one.
I could barely finish Bling Ring because my trouble with Sofia Coppola is I think she's pretty good, but maybe it's just because of who she is. When she's working with an actor who isn't like top 5% best in the world, doesn't really need directing, she can't direct an actor. I thought the performances from everybody other than Watson were just dead in the water, and it felt like they were flailing for somebody to direct.
Well, I thought that she really treated the female characters super unfairly in that movie, which I think I even wrote a little thing on Smug about that. You know, it was about these main characters are all female, and yet the only sympathetic character and the only one with any depth is the one male character in that entire movie, which I thought was a bummer.
Sofia Coppola, I think the only one I like is Lost in Translation. I don't really like her other stuff. I didn't really care about Virgin Suicide Somewhere or whatever the other ones are, Marie Antoinette. Yeah, something really worked in Lost in Translation that I don't even know if I could quantify what worked about that movie. I think if I could describe it technically, I think the sound design on that movie was immaculate. I remember I read some trivia thing on like IMDb where like all the sounds, when she's in like the arcade and she's walking around like all the arcade machines, all the sound in there was put in afterwards. And you watch that scene and it just works so well. And you realize how much sound design went into making it work that well. And I think it's just the sound of that movie is just incredible. I think that's what really worked for me with that one.
All right, sound design leads me to my pick for this topic.
Yeah.
8.5, which is sort of a controversial one.
That's a Fellini that works for you?
You don't like Fellini?
I think Fellini was incredibly talented, and I'm glad there is a Fellini out there. I have never wanted to watch a Fellini movie again, except for 8.5. 8.5 is the only one. And you know what it is? It's so good. And I saw it, I think I was like 13, 14 when I saw it. It was about the first Italian movie I've ever seen. It was so good that its specter sort of hangs over all of Italian film for me. And I've been vaguely disappointed by that whole golden era of Italian cinema because none of them have been as good as 8.5 to me.
Wow.
And a lot of it is that sort of distancing effect you get from those films because all the sound was done ADR. I think 8.5 is one of the only times it works for me. That distance really feels appropriate and it feels earned. I love 8.5. I think it's if anything better than most people give it credit for. But no other Fellini films have really captured me. La Strada came the closest, but even that one, it just the pacing of them is always off to me. The pacing of Italian film in general, I have trouble with. It feels languid to me, and it always feels like just the structure of storytelling in Italian cinema to me feels too loose. But in 8.5, it works because you have all these scenes that have their own climaxes. Whereas in a lot of other movies, you don't get... A lot of other movies, you get these sort of long scenes to nowhere, and then at the very end of it, you get a climax, and it feels meandering.
Oh, I was about to say, have you seen Juliet of the Spirits? But it absolutely does what you just described.
Yeah.
I love
and
Juliet of the
it's
Spirits.
good. Like, I don't think 8.5 is the only good Golden Age Italian movie, but to me, it's the only one that's really, like, bulletproof, top tier, as good as it gets filmmaking. A lot of the other ones leave me just wishing there was a tighter hand somewhere in there.
I agree with that. I mean, well, 8.5, but I like Fellini, but 8.5 is definitely my favorite of his.
Yeah, I don't like 8.5. I don't like Fellini.
Really?
No.
What don't you like about 8.5?
8.5, if I could like quantify what turned me off about it, my feeling of it was that it just bored the shit out of me. But if I were to, actually have an opinion beyond that, it would be that it felt like he was playing around with something. I didn't feel like he found what he was looking for, what he was trying to express with that movie. And that's something that that repels me from movies generally. I like the filmmaker to finally figure out what he was going for, and I just didn't get that vibe from 8.5.
You don't think the end scene did that? I think it's one of the best endings ever. I also think Tree of Life was sabotaged by the fact that it tried to do the 8.5 ending, but didn't have 8.5's impeccable sense of timing.
Tree of Life, the middle chunk of that movie is just perfection, and the beginning and the end of that I can't deal with. It doesn't work. The
ending is, I think it's essentially an adaptation of the ending of 8.5, but it doesn't work. I don't think it works the way 8.5 does, because 8.5, it's just this beautiful, strange moment that's perfectly logical. You know, of course, everybody he knew would come to a circus and he would just experience all that again. It works so well in the film and in the context of Fellini's career. It's just so many images he was struggling with coming to fruition at the same time. Whereas Tree of Life, it felt like you got what he was trying to do in 2 minutes, and then it lingered for 45 minutes just to, I don't even know why, frankly, just to be there. Yeah, I think he couldn't bear to cut a lot of stuff in that movie.
And he even says that he wants to do like a 6 hour, an 8 hour, like he wants to just keep upping that cut of that movie. Malick says about Tree of Life. Fellini, with 8.5, I adore Woody Allen's movie Stardust Memories, and I feel like it hit a lot of the stuff in 8.5, but in a more fun way that I understood a little bit better. Like there wasn't that as much distance where I was trying to catch up to what was going on in Fellini's head. Like Stardust is just like, turn that movie on. The moment he starts with his little surreal sequences, I'm on board fully. I get him fully.
Well, that one starts with less cultural distance for you.
Exactly.
And that was made 10 blocks away from you.
Yeah. That's a big part of it. I think a lot of the distance I have with Fellini, and also probably Godard. The only Godard movie I like is Breathless. And anything else by him, it just doesn't, I can't connect with.
Because it feels like it's the only movie Godard ever made, as opposed to film essays, which I can't deal with them. Him, when he gets into those essay movies, and Straub Hulot, when they would do it too, it's ridiculous to me, because Godard in particular knows so well the strengths of film as a medium. And he would go on these tears through the 60s, and even now he does it, where he would just completely disregard all that and make a research paper as a movie.
I think Masculine, Feminine, and Alphaville, those felt like research papers to me, whereas
Alphaville, big time.
Parola Foo doesn't, and A Woman is a Woman never did. I love both of those movies. I think that they're very cute. I mean, they're not like deep. They could be. Actually, Parola Foo gets a bit deeper. The sort of romanticism versus existentialism theme that he's going on, which I guess could be an essay, but I thought that was a more charming film.
It's charming, but it gets a little all over the place towards like the middle. I was with it at the start, and then it just got a little too... There are too many jumps.
But it goes surrealist enough by the end that it like sort of wins me back over. I love the ending. I love him painting himself blue and then strapping the dynamite. That's a great ending to that movie.
I understand that, yeah. That whole ending in that film, it reminded me a bit of is it Trust that it reminded me of?
The Hal Hartley one?
Yeah, it doesn't have that similar thing with like a grenade or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And I liked it. I liked how it worked a lot better in Trust. I like the vibe of it in Trust better, even though I'm not a huge fan of Trust. And also Heathers too. Heathers would be a good example of that kind of third act. Just kind of worked for me.
Heathers is a masterpiece. Heathers is one of the best movies of the 80s, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's even, I can say that I think it's one of the best movies of the 80s, and I probably, if I were grading it, I would probably give it like a 3.5 out of 5, but there's something about that movie that transcends how good or bad I even think it is.
You know what it is? It's the screenplay is so tight.
Yeah.
That screenplay is textbook.
That's a good point.
I mean, every beat of it is either giving you something about the character or some breather of humor, or it's reversing something. There's just so much content into that screenplay.
To bring it back to the Italian guys, I'm surprised De Sica doesn't work for you that much.
He's all right. Now that I've said that, I sort of immediately regret saying it, because I really like Leone. Obviously, I I love
Exactly, yeah.
Leone. And Salima and a few of the other ones. Bava was incredible. He was hit or miss, but when he was hit, Mario Bava was top 5 all time at what he was doing. Even, actually, I would say Italian film to me is summed up in the career of Lucio Fulci, who had these moments of beautiful and powerful, like raw, primal cinema. I'm thinking of stuff like The End of the Beyond, or the end of the one Western he did where it was all in the snow, 4 of the Apocalypse. He has these moments that are really stunning and so unlike anything anybody else is making, and really visually driven. But then he'll have these long chunks. Sometimes it'll last for a whole movie. Sometimes it'll only be 30 to 40 minutes, where it's just these meandering, surfacey, overwrought conversations and scenes that just don't give you anything. You didn't get better from a different scene.
So that brings me into the director who I don't like with movies I like, which is Altman. I don't like Altman.
I still can't believe that. That's crazy to me.
But what do you like of him?
Well, I love The Long Goodbye, and I really liked California Split. But for Altman, it's the same. It's exactly that. I feel like it's this like slice of life about people I don't give a fuck about. It's just like these conversations that sort of like they never end. Nothing ever happens. People are introduced, and then by the end of the 3-hour movie, they're the same person as the first person you met, and it drives me absolutely nuts. But then you have something like The Long Goodbye, which is this great film noir with a 20-minute scene of him trying to feed his cat of Elliot Gould, hanging out with a cat, and it's like just the best film, and it works so well. It has it sets this serene mood. You have this sort of little murder mystery, and he's such a weird guy that you want to know what he does, with his cat. You want to see what happens when he's alone in a room, because he's just he's so just cool. He just oozes coolness.
Really? He oozes coolness too? I think he's one of the goofiest characters I've ever seen. In a great way. I love that movie and I love that character, but
he's ridiculous.
It's just the opposite of cool to me. It's this he's Cohen's brother-y to me, that character.
Maybe that's why I like it then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love character movies. And I mean, that also, which is why you'd think I'd like Altman, since most of his movies are about just a person doing something. But I don't know. California Split I like too. And I don't know if it's just Elliot Gould, me liking him, but and George Segal in that. But what I loved about California Split, which is it's like 2 gamblers going through their lives, is the ending of that. Had an ending. There was a point to it. Whereas I feel like with Altman, for the most part, it's this, again, it's like meandering, pointless kind of thing that just never does it for me.
He always had trouble with endings. That's why, that's the big problem most people have with MASH, including me, is I love that movie when it's on, but there's just, the ending is horrendous.
Oh, it's awful. I don't see,
But
I
then
hate
Nashville is one of the best endings I've ever seen. I mean, Nashville, that ending is beautiful. When they're all on stage together. It's a lot like the ending of 8.5, where it's almost a curtain call, actually.
I like curtain call endings. Like, I like the kind of Wes Anderson curtain call ending that he puts in,
Yeah, you got to earn them, though.
That's true. I think the one in Life Aquatic that just kind of stretches throughout the credits and just keeps on going. Like, it's the ultimate just, like, let's just get everybody in kind of ending. I think that one really, really worked well. So another movie that I like by a director that I usually don't would be School of Rock, the Richard Linklater movie. That's the only one of his movies that really works for me. I think it's a great kids movie. I think it's got a good vibe for adults. I think it hits that perfect level. I never dug Slacker. I never dug the Before Sunrises. I like parts of Waking Life. I like the stuff with like Alex Jones like ranting in his car, and there are good parts in that, but none of his movies ever just completely grab me, except for that one. I just think it's really solid. It
grabs you? How?
It's one of those movies where, like, I went and saw it because I was just in the mood for something simple. And I think there's a lot to be said for writing one line in a movie. I like movies that, peaks and valleys and twists and turns and stuff. But there's something to be said for just walking that perfect tightrope of, this is a perfect family film, It doesn't have to be a family film, but just riding one tightrope can be very, very impressive. And I think that's what that movie really did perfectly.
I don't love him indiscriminately, but overall I really like his movies. And I think his voice is interesting. And that movie makes sense to me because I think it works for the reasons that his other movies work when they work. I think it's very honest. School of Rock really feels very honest to me in the way the Before Sun-Time movies feel and Dazed and Confused feel. There's just sort of like there's not a lot of emotional hiding in that movie, you know? It reminds me of Almost Famous, which is one of those ones that I always think I just like it out of nostalgia, and then every time I watch it again, I realize it's not only the best movie Cameron Crowe ever did, but probably the movie Cameron Crowe was building his whole career to do. There's just this sweet honesty to them that, whereas something like Pirate Radio, which tried to go in the School of Rock, Almost Famous, music nostalgia vein, that one felt so contrived and emotionally dishonest. I think something like a music movie, I feel like you can really tell. That's a place where it really matters.
Yeah, that's a good point. I remember when I saw that movie Watchmen, all the use of music in that movie, it's all very obvious. And like when you're reading the graphic novel, these songs are being referenced in the novel. Like All Along the Watchtower, they use that one. There's like all the songs in that, they're just so fucking obvious. But when you're reading a novel, like you're not really hearing the song, you're just seeing like a snippet of lyrics, like at the start of a chapter. I think that's how it was handled. When you're watching the movie, it came so close to just feeling so obvious and terrible, but it had this tongue-in-cheek quality to the use of the music where it was like, we're rewriting America as this movie is taking place. And it was like these great little, signposts along the way that gave you the vibe of like, this isn't really how things happened.
It was a bizarro Forrest Gump almost.
Yeah. Yes. That's a perfect description, actually. Yeah. It was like the comic book Forrest Gump, essentially.
Actually, Forrest Gump is a good one because Castaway is the only Robert Zemeckis movie I like. And
really?
I love Castaway. I think it's beautiful. But Forrest Gump is, if I had to find an emblem of all the decisions filmmakers make that will turn me off to their movie, Forrest Gump has them all.
Ah.
And Flight, I thought, was really cheap. The Back to the Future movies I don't like. I just don't respond to Zemeckis' sort of comfortable, emotionally middling sentiments ever. I feel like he never dives into the emotions. He's very... I always, in my head, compare him with Ron Howard because I feel like they try to make similar movies, these sort of broad swaths of American historical comedy dramas. But Ron Howard, to me, I feel like he really is putting his heart into them. Zemeckis, I feel like, is just putting sort of a watchmaker's mentality into them. He's just trying to construct things, which I have a limited interest in. But Castaway, to me, I thought it was brilliant. It was so emotionally raw, and it was so daring. I mean, to think that movie was... To think they did that, and they put that kind of money into that. Now you see those all the time, the sort of one-man show movies, and the sort of imperiled A-lister movies. But it had been... I don't know, maybe 30 years since somebody had tried that. The last one I can think of was The Naked Prey with Cornel Wilde. And Castaway was just, I don't think it missed a beat. It was so strong emotionally and visually, and just, it was tight in a way that I've never felt about a Zemeckis movie before or since.
I thought that Forrest Gump it worked for Forrest Gump. I understand what you're saying. I agree with you. I hate that sort of cheesy, fake, phony, everyone loves each other kind of stuff that wraps up perfectly with a bow. But I liked Forrest Gump because it was like a folk hero kind of story. It's like, them sort of inserting this one character throughout history and weaving him. It was cute. I mean, like, it wasn't something that I cried at. It was, it had a couple of laughs kind of thing. But
I also have major complaints with his interpretation of American history, though. I don't like the way he treated the Black Panthers in that movie. I don't like the way he treated the American left in that movie, or the anti-war movement. There was this sort of this Reagan-y demonization, this like easy demonization of the far left at the time and the Black Panthers and all these organizations. And like Jenny is essentially punished for being a war protester by the movie. She dies because of it. It's just like his concept of American history I didn't like to begin with. And then what he did with that broken concept, I thought it just did nothing for me. It felt very, it felt like a Time Life commercial for a mix CD to me, you know?
Yeah, that's a fair point about his harshness. And I think that's what, you know, I brought this up in a previous one, but Tarantino once said to Zemeckis that he thought it was like the best dark comedy he'd seen in a while. And Zemeckis was like, thank you, somebody who finally gets Forrest Gump. I really think it's a lot harsher and darker than people realize. You know, when you see the imagery of like the feather floating and like the score and like all these, like I never understood the people that would think of it almost as like a feel-good romp. It's a really twisted film. And I think if it had come out now, it would have been even more twisted and less secretive in its twistedness. You know, I think it would have been a little bit more overtly harsh, you know, and overtly dark in its dark humor. I thought it rode this line where it could be, you know, an Oscar winner. It could be like this cultural zeitgeist kind of thing for the time. Whereas now I think it would turn off a lot of people. I think the approach that would be taken would be almost like a Todd Solondz kind of polarizing approach.
Yeah, you couldn't make Forrest Gump now. Nobody would believe it now. It had to come out in the Clinton years, pretty much.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of sappy and dark movies, Clint Eastwood as a director is somebody who I can't stand, but I love Play Misty for Me, which is actually his first movie. But for the most part, I mean, like I always think of Sergio Leone's quote about Clint Eastwood, where he said, he has two acting types, hat on, hat off. And that's how I feel like he is as a director too. It's the same thing.
What
it's
movies would you say that about, though?
I really hated High Plains Drifter. I hated Outlaw Josie Wales. I hated Mystic River.
Whoa.
I hated Gran Torino. All of his movies end with him just being the coolest guy in the room.
That is not how Outlaw Josie Wales. Outlaw Josie Wales ends with him, this battered veteran, walking up to an Indian chief saying, "We have both been betrayed by the government, by every authority figure imaginable. We can stop a war right now if all we do is not fight." It's such a beautiful... Outlaw Josie Wales is that perfect Watergate era rejection of the sort of classical... It's the anti-Dirty Harry to me. It's this...
Oh, I disagree.
It's this miracle, non-violent, violent movie, which is such a... And Unforgiven was the same way. Unforgiven, I think, you could make a case that Unforgiven was so fucking radical in its conception of what violence is and what it means that Unforgiven is why we haven't had a Western that really believed in the myth of the Western since Unforgiven. It absolutely annihilated that fucking Sergio Leone era concept of the beautiful gunfight, which is something that I like, and I think it's visually really beautiful and it's cinematic as all hell, but Unforgiven and Outlaw Josie Wales and High Plains Drifter are this sort of like late career John Fordish annihilation of the whole stratified, like ossified action Western thing. I mean, you know, the Young Guns thing. I think those two movies are just so beautiful and so smart and they manage to be complex and exciting at the same time. They manage to, he never plays it safe. In Unforgiven, it's never like he comes out and says, we should feel bad about liking these cowboy westerns. All it is this, we have a history, both in the film and out of the film, of some terrible shit and some beautiful stories about that terrible shit. And it might be time now to try to find a new model. There's light years ahead of everything else. But I feel like there are two Clint Eastwoods, because I didn't get that sense at all from, say, Gran Torino or Mystic River.
Oh, I think they're all the same movie, because like High Plains Drifter, Outlaw Josie Wales, you have this guy who, you know, he builds this sort of like family. I'm the coolest guy. I know everything. And yet here he is like raping women who then fall in love with him afterwards, or he's like
That's High
shooting
Plains
everybody.
Drifter. That's not Outlaw Josie Wales.
There's rape in Outlaw Josie Wales too. And then for Outlaw Josie Wales, I just remember it being that everyone's rallying around this one guy who doesn't seem to care for these other people unless it's beneficial for him personally, and which is why he becomes directly involved, which I feel like is definitely the Clint Eastwood. That's him. That's all Clint Eastwood. Like, I enjoy him in Sergio Leone movies. Like when he's directing his own movies, half the time it's just about how he's the
definition
king
of the Sergio Leone character that he built for Eastwood. That is the definition of the man with no name. He's not like that in Josie Wales. He starts out as that type, and by the end, he's grown into this different role where he accepts that he's part of a whole, and he can't. Unforgiven is the same thing, where he can't be that character. And High Plains Drifter, he's not a hero in High Plains Drifter. He is portrayed as a demon. He's a supernatural character in High Plains Drifter, and he's supposed to be an avenging spirit.
Yeah, that was the coolest part of that movie.
But it's not. I think the character you're describing is the character he's in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and not at all the character he's in Outlaw Josie Wales or High Plains Drifter or Unforgiven at all.
Well, I
don't see that at all, really.
What I love about Play Misty for me is that he's the vulnerable character in that movie, which I thought was very interesting, and probably because it was his directorial debut. I think that he sort of tried to do something a little different from Leone and tried to sort of distance himself, even though he is kind of the winner in the end. But you basically have Jessica Walters, who's this crazy psycho stalker, and she's menacing. I think it's pretty, it's impressive, and it's fun, and it's a creepy movie, and it doesn't have that same Clint Eastwood all over it feeling that I think all of his other movies do.
I think the more recent Clint Eastwood stuff you can find a lot more holes in. I think Mystic River, I think it's a piece of shit. I think Changeling or whatever that was called sucked, but $1 Million Baby, sort of, kind of a good movie, kind of not. And I think Gran Torino, I think is fantastic. I love that movie.
Ugh, I think it's a racist piece of shit.
Racist?
Oh God, so racist. So white man's burden.
White man's burden?
Here he is. He has his neighbors who, it's this old racist white guy. And I think that a lot of people like that movie because they think, oh, it's just like my grandpa. Guess what? Your grandpa's racist, man. Like, he's a racist piece of shit. All he does, and then he decides that it's his, he has to go save his neighbors and he has to stand up to those colored folk and all this, I hated it.
I thought it was hysterical.
On a practical level, though, it's about the only movie that ever made the effort of going and finding the, what were they? They were Hmong people?
Right, exactly.
Actually finding people of that ancestry and putting them in as themselves in that movie. There was absolutely zero whitewashing in it, which I think is the biggest problem in Hollywood now, racially, is whitewashing. And Gran Torino was one of the great cinematic arguments against it, just in practical terms.
Yeah, then you got a white guy saving him.
Yeah, but it's hysterical, that movie. Like, it's touching towards the end, too. But there's so many moments that are just hysterical. Like, when he's eating the food, at their house, and he's just kind of, wandering through their little house party and, going off in the corner and, grabbing some, food and stuff. Just the trajectory of that scene is hysterical. And I love the barbershop stuff with, him having the kid come into the barbershop over and over again. There's so many hysterical moments in that film. And, I wasn't prepared for any of that at all. I don't think the audience was either. And as we sort of collectively eased into the movie, it became this rip-roarious laughter fest.
There's some great character beats in that movie.
Yeah.
I don't love it overall. I don't think I'd ever want to go back to it, but just his control over character in that movie is really incredible.
It holds up surprisingly well. I've seen it 1 or 2 times since. I liked it a lot.
The only scene that made me laugh is when he gets shot in the cross position.
Yes, but that's what I love about that movie is that that is funny, and it's okay for that to be funny, and it's also okay for that to be touching too. And I think that was the great line that movie rode, was that it was kind of ridiculous. The entire thing was ridiculous, and you can either roll your eyes at the movie or you can roll your eyes with the movie. I just thought it was very celebratory about race in a way that a lot of movies aren't.
It's honest, too. It's honest in the way that I don't think anybody of our generation would be honest in that way. I think it's honest from the perspective of someone who's not particularly interested in being progressive.
Right.
And still finds humanity in everybody, which has always been part of the reason why I think Eastwood at his best is one of the best directors out there. I think he's a better director than he is an actor, honestly. And I think it's because he never shies away from finding both the conflict in his heart in the story he's doing and the humanity in everybody in the movie he's making, which is why Outlaw Josie Wales in some ways I think is his best movie, because it's structurally, it's so unusual. It's so unforgiving and then so gentle at the end. And Unforgiven is kind of the other way around. Unforgiven, you have no, I take it back. Unforgiven is his masterpiece. Unforgiven is, if anybody listening to this has not seen Unforgiven, just drop everything. Drop everything. Do it now.
I haven't seen any of those fucking movies you guys are talking about.
Unforgiven is a stunner.
I gotta step my Eastwood game up. I've really only seen the latter wave of his movies.
The first group is worth watching.
Yeah, I gotta check that out.
But Unforgiven has this thing where you're introduced to a man who you're told is a stone cold killer. And you're introduced to him, and he's this like bumbling grandfatherly idiot on a farm who, like, you're introduced to him while he's trying to wrangle pigs. And you like in the first hour and a half, you come to know him as this like gruff, wise, sweet, like heart of gold, mean guy, like he is in Gran Torino. And then in the last half hour, it strips all that shit away, and it says, no, every story you heard about this man is true. He is god awful, and it does not matter that he's cutely gruff sometimes. Unforgiven is really like, it's unforgiving is what it is. It really is. It does not flinch. And the trouble, Westerns are easily one of my favorite genre because I think when they're at their best, they don't flinch. And when they're at their worst, they're really they dance around the ethical problems with what they're doing. But Eastwood at its best in Unforgiven and Josie Wales does not dance around the ethical problems with what we're watching.
I got to check those out. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back with the flip side of the coin, so to speak. We're going to tackle movies that suck by directors that we generally love. So, see you in a second. Last week, we had a contest where we gave away 5 copies of The Room, the Tommy Wiseau or Tommy Wiseau, or however you pronounce it, movie. At the time that this episode airs, those of you who won a copy should have been contacted on Twitter. So check your little thingy on Twitter that tells you when people contact you or whatever. And you should see something from us if you want a copy. We hope to do some more contests in the future. So keep listening, and when you hear that sound, that's when the contest is happening. So always be listening for that sound when you're listening to these podcasts, you know. You might win something. You might win a movie. How great is that? You love movies. That's why you listen to this thing. All right, back to the show. And we're back. And this half of the show, we are going to talk about movies that we dislike by directors that we generally like or love. And right off the bat, I'm going to say Moonrise Kingdom. Moonrise Kingdom, that's the Wes Anderson that doesn't work for me. And we actually kind of talked about that already in episode 4. So if you want to hear us just go on about Wes Anderson pretty thoroughly for like an extended period of time, just go back and listen to that episode. We don't really need to touch on that one here.
That was a good one.
That was a good episode, right, guys?
Great times.
Episode 4, that was a good one. They're all good. You know, let's put that out there. We don't want people thinking they should be missing certain episodes. They're all good. Anyway, the one I'm going to bring up for this half is Woody Allen's film Don't Drink the Water. And that's not the 60s one that he wrote and somebody else directed. This is the one that he directed for TV in, I guess, the early 90s with like Mayim Bialik, or however you say her name, and Michael J. Fox is in it. It's like a very, early 90s, yay, these people cast. And that movie does not work at all. There's not 1 second of that movie that works for me. And I'm the hugest Woody Allen fan. All of his other films work perfectly for me. That's the one where I'm like, it almost makes me feel like some people feel watching Woody Allen movies. Like, that's the reaction it gets out of me, where I'm like, finally, I understand what people mean when they say that some of his movies are grating. And so that one's just...
What in what way?
I think it's because it was made for television, it's shot 4:3, and...
you love 4:3.
No, I'm not saying anything against 4:3, but it's shot 4:3 in that, like, early 90s... it just doesn't have
you
that...
You love the early 90s.
All right, let me explain. I love 4:3. I love the early 90s, but it does not work for Mr. Woody Allen. It feels like TV in a way that just doesn't feel right for him, and it's just off. That whole movie is off. If you ever want to see a Woody Allen movie that's really bad, like a lot of people, they'll say like, oh, Curse of the Jade Scorpion and it's kind of shitty, or like people always have their Woody Allen movies that they don't like. No, you will love whatever Woody Allen movie you think you don't like after you've seen Don't Drink the Water, which you did for TV. It's on DVD. You can find it for like $1 perpetually on like Amazon.com. It's one of those ones where anybody who has a copy has it for sale used. Anyone who bought that movie is trying to get rid of it.
That makes me want to see it.
Does the TV thing affect the pacing? I mean, does it move like... Because I feel like he has very delicate pacing.
Yeah, it definitely affects the pacing. It's almost like they're trying to breeze through the entire film. They're trying to get it over with. It's just like... And it's not quick in like a fun way. It's quick in like a... It really doesn't feel like he directed it, but I guess he did. His name's on it as director, but it feels like somebody trying to approximate Woody Allen. And I guess it's just him trying to approximate himself for this format that he's uncomfortable with.
What if it's a different, unrelated man named Woody Allen who directed it?
That reminds me of the Garfield thing that Bill Murray ran into. The reason why he did Garfield was because he thought it was one of the Coens wrote it, and it turned out to be one letter off. It was like Cohen.
Yeah, it's Joel Cohen, Cohen. Yeah, he wrote it.
You heard about that, Jenna?
No, that's beautiful.
Yeah, he said it in an interview not too long ago. He said the only reason he did the Garfield movie was because he looked at the script, front cover, saw the name Joel Cohen, was like, I don't know about a Garfield movie, but hey, I like the Coen brothers, so I'll give it a shot.
The Garfield TV show was pretty amusing.
That was pretty damn good, that show.
I would have done it for that.
Yeah, I like the U.S. Acres segments of that way better than the other ones. But, this isn't 90s cartoon talk. This is...
Hold on, I got one more 90s cartoon thing now. Bill Murray replaced the guy who played Garfield in that cartoon series. The guy who played Garfield in that cartoon series replaced Bill Murray in the Ghostbusters series. So they constantly keep taking each other's roles. Right? Yeah.
A little rivalry.
Because he was the voice of Venkman in those terrible Ghostbusters cartoons.
Right. And then they changed the hair color on like one of the guys. They like changed the hair color on Egon.
Yeah, they made it like white hair or something.
Yeah, it was weird. And like I remember looking that up online, trying to figure out why they did it. And I thought it was like a rights thing. I thought it was like probably like a rights to like the looks of the characters that they had to like change them somewhat. And they were like, no, it's just... We wanted them all to stand out. It was like, we might as well have a blonde character because those kind of shows, we need a blonde character, a redhead, a brunette. Like, we just need these kind of characters where nobody looks too much the same. It's just a silly studio decision.
The Star Trek animated series, which incidentally is one of the great cartoons of all time, and everybody should watch it because it's so much fun.
I got that for Jenna for a Secret Santa one year.
Damn right he did.
So much fun. But do you remember the one where they're fighting these like Wookiee looking monsters, but they're all pink?
I remember none of them because I have never seen it.
Well, they're fighting these like hairy monster guys, and the monsters are all pink. And the reason they're all pink was because the director of that episode was colorblind and thought he made them brown.
Oh my God.
100% true story.
That explains so much about that cartoon.
Right? And it leads to the question, why would a colorblind man seek employment as the director of an animated series?
That's wonderful. So what's your pick, John, for a movie that you dislike by a director that you traditionally like or love?
I'm picking Dracula, the 1931 one, directed by Todd Browning. Browning, he came out in the silent era, and his peak was the late 20s, mid-20s, when he was doing a lot of movies with Lon Chaney, like The Unholy Three, The Unknown, and the famous Lost London After Midnight. So he had this run of really great, dark, silent thriller horror movies with Lon Chaney. And then Lon Chaney died. And what happened was he really wanted to do Dracula with Lon Chaney as Dracula. Lon Chaney dies. He's still attached to the project, but he's in mourning about the death of his friend and collaborator. So he directs Dracula, and it's the only movie of his where there's no visual interest at all. It's two shots, wide shots. The lighting is all very boilerplate. It's the only one where he just does not give a fuck. And he doesn't give a fuck because he wanted to do it with his friend who died. So there's this, it's sort of heartbreaking, actually.
Yeah, that sounds
that's depressing.
awful.
And it was also,
Yeah.
it was his first sound movie, and it was based on a play, and it never stops being a play. Because there's a moment in the film where Dracula changes into a wolf and he runs across the yard. But what they do is they just show Van Helsing look out the window and say, there's a wolf running across the yard. That must be Dracula. And I guess it doesn't occur to them to just film a wolf running across the yard. There's a lot of these very stagey decisions in it because he just didn't put any heart into it. And then his next one after that was Freaks, which is a stunner. Just a beautiful movie. And I guess by then he had gotten over it a little bit.
But a very dark movie to its own credit. You know?
Yeah, I mean, all his movies were dark. He was a very dark filmmaker. He really would have been a great choice for Dracula on paper if he did it right. Dracula, I think, is the only one of the Universal monsters that the movie just is not any good. And it's really because of the death of Lon Chaney.
Is there a version of Dracula you like?
They simultaneously, when they were doing those 30s versions of those movies, they would, on those sets at night, film foreign language versions of them. So it's kind of how a lot of films survive now. Like George Pabst's Don Quixote movie, there's 3 language versions of it existing. It was like a thing they would do then because it was too hard to dub. So while they were doing Dracula, at night, they had a whole crew come onto set and do Spanish language Dracula, which is very good. It's almost a half hour longer, but there's no extra scenes. It's just they play the time differently, you know? And when there's that famous scene at the beginning when Dracula meets what's his face on the steps of the castle and it's all cobwebbed. There's a few shots in the Spanish version where you can see Dracula walking through cobwebs without disturbing them. And there's nothing like that in the English language version. And the Hammer versions, actually, in the 50s, I thought were really good. Overall, as a character, I'm more interested in Frankenstein. And as movies, I think a lot of the Frankenstein movies were better than any of the Dracula ones. But Horror of Dracula from 58, 59, and the Spanish language Dracula from 31, I thought were very good. And if it counts, Vampire, the one by Carl Dreyer, the Carl Dreyer movie, Vampire. But I'm not sure that counts. It's it's an adaptation of a different story, but it borrows a lot from the film Dracula stuff.
It's always interesting to me that all this vampire stuff has come back again, honestly. I never was a big fan of old Dracula. Frankenstein, yeah, why do you like Frankenstein more?
I think it's just a more interesting story. I think the story of Frankenstein is just beautiful, this idea of essentially an orphan, you know? It's Paul Bunyan crossed with a feral child story. And it's a lot of it is what ended up becoming King Kong and Godzilla too. This idea of something that's just too big for Earth and the last of its kind, I think is always, and it's an increasingly relevant thing because it's the story of modern man. You know, we're just laying waste and we're not even when we're not trying. But also the film versions of Frankenstein are amazing. The 1931 Frankenstein, I mean, I would put that up as the best production design I've ever seen in a movie. It's all taken from the Weimar German Expressionist. It was when etchings were very popular in art, these bold black and white lines. And it's crypts and graveyards and windmills and everything, but it's all done without irony because it hadn't been done before.
And it looks amazing.
Yeah. And it's just this beautiful, you couldn't do it again because your brain would be so full of other versions of that stuff that it had this sort of pioneer, it was the first to do it kind of approach. And then the Hammer Frankenstein stuff in the 50s, I think, is great because what Hammer did was smart was the Universal Frankenstein movies, which is Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, Son of Frankenstein, and then a few other bad ones, Ghost and all that. Those first 3 Universal ones, I almost said Universal Soldier. Those first 3 Universal...
We love Universal Soldier.
Yeah, we do. Those first 3 Universal Frankenstein movies are amazing, and they're very much worth watching. But what they do is they follow the monster. The Hammer ones in the 50s, they were smart enough to try to find their own way, and they follow the story of the doctor, not the monster. So they have Horror of Frankenstein, where Frankenstein runs amok, and then I think he's killed. And then the next movie is about the doctor making another one. And through the course of these 5 or 6 movies, you see this protagonist. It's Walter White. You see this scientist who's a very smart guy whose basic structural problem in his brain is pride. You see this guy become the worst person on the planet over the course of the 5 or 6 movies. They're basically the Breaking Bad with a monster.
Also worth noting is the movie Spirit of the Beehive.
Yes.
Which it's a Spanish movie about a little girl who sees Frankenstein and is kind of too young to really get it, but gets it on it kind of changes her outlook on everything around her, and it's her confronting death and confronting awful things happening through seeing that movie.
She thinks there's a Frankenstein monster running around.
Right.
Because she's too young to understand that movies are make-believe.
It's a hell of a movie.
It's a beautiful, beautiful movie. I think it's the best Spanish movie I've ever seen. It's
up
good.
there. I would put it neck and neck with Cría Cuervos, which coincidentally stars the same little girl.
Yeah.
I think they're both immaculate films. So, Jenna, what's your choice for this topic?
My choice is Christopher Nolan, who I like in general. I'm usually excited to see what his new movies that come out. I liked The Prestige. I liked all Batman. I liked Memento. But I didn't like Inception. I thought Inception was just pointless, flat. The characters were also 2D, and I didn't really get it. I think what really held the movie back is that all the suspense is based around one company just trying to beat out another company. So who really wins in the end? It's just capitalism. Like, I don't really understand the point. Or maybe it was meant to be about, Leonardo DiCaprio seeing his kids, but he was so boring I didn't give a shit. What about you guys? Did you like that movie?
Oh, no, absolutely not. I remember my sister, she adored it. She saw it like opening night. She was like, you got to see this. It's so good. It's like the next Matrix. It's like the best. I go see it. I'm like, oh my God, I hate this movie. It's just, none of it worked for me.
It was definitely, it was trying to be that kind of Matrix. It was great looking in a lot of ways. It was interesting as a concept, but it was so in love with itself and the idea of itself as a movie that I felt like the actual content was just so flat. And there's so many good actors.
The storytelling took a backseat to all the cool stuff that he thought about this concept. Like, it almost felt like a trailer for selling me the concept of a movie that would then be made with like a dope story.
That's a Nolan problem across the board. Everybody who knows me knows that I just can't deal with Christopher Nolan. I can't deal with his movies, and I can't deal with the effect he has on other filmmakers.
I do think Prestige is pretty damn good, though. But
the only one I really like is Memento.
Okay.
And I think you can only truly hate the works of a filmmaker if you think they have it in them to be great. And Nolan does.
Absolutely.
I mean, his casting, first of all, his eye for casting is unreal. And his camera work is great, and his intentions are usually good. His ideas are right on the money, but he's become an action director who can't shoot action, and he doesn't know when to do it. And Inception, my big problem with Inception was that it had this beautiful idea of this turned over city that was sort of the crux of the whole film. And how did it reveal it? It showed it to us in a training montage and then never used it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Think about how great that movie would have been if it ended with that chase, gunfight, whatever, instead of in the Ice Palace level from GoldenEye in that flipped over city. He pushes visual action so far, but not consistently. Dark Knight was the same way. Dark Knight had that the second one. That's Dark Knight, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it had that great scene where he's in the motorcycle and they flip the truck over, and I love that part. But then there's another 45 minutes afterwards, and it's just a series of lamer action sequences in a row.
Right.
He's not good at knowing when to just say, this is the best part of the movie, so I need to move things around so that it ends after this.
That cheesy part in the Dark Knight when he has like the special goggles and he's like looking into a building and stuff.
Oh, it's terrible.
Like, why is this exciting? We saw a truck flip over like 20 minutes ago. Why would we possibly be excited by Batman looking through goggles at like a building?
It's like Return of the King, how it never ended.
Yeah.
The last Lord of the Rings.
But how did nobody in all the years of pre-production and production for Inception, when they were sketching out that flipped over city, say, why don't we set the ending here? This is the best part of the movie. Well, we're wasting it on a 5-second throwaway shot. It was a trailer shot.
Exactly.
It was shot for a trailer. It wasn't shot for the movie.
And it worked because it brought people in to see it. You know? It was a great image. I think he's at that point where, you know, the cliche of you're at this point where everybody just says yes to you and nobody really challenges your ideas. Remember when there was that whole debate about like film versus digital? And like Nolan was very firmly, film is best, film is great, it's awesome, I'm never doing digital, it's like the greatest thing. And nobody argued with him whatsoever. And I think that probably happens behind the scenes too. Like all those articles that came out, like, all right, this is Nolan's thoughts on it. It was when Keanu Reeves made that like side by side movie.
Yeah, which was a great documentary.
Yeah, very, very good. Definitely worth checking out. But nobody argues with Nolan in it.
There's one simple reason why they don't. He's brought in all his movies on budget.
That's a very good point.
That's why as long as he does that, the studios will let him do whatever he wants. Because he just doesn't run over budget. He's a robot of a filmmaker. I feel like he's got so much potential, and he showed it in Memento, and he shows it fitfully in his other movies, but he's an accountant to me, not a filmmaker.
Yeah, I'd like to see him go back to a lower budget. I think that's where he would sort of shine. I think he got kind of caught up in the glitz and glamour of Batman. Like, I like the first one the best, and then the bigger the budget and the bigger the stakes and the longer the movie, and then it becomes more robotic and Hollywood and less interesting to me.
Because he doesn't know how to handle stakes. He makes these stakes that are great on paper, but the bigger he makes his stakes, the less he knows how to express it. So his best sequence to me as an action sequence is that 2-person chase scene in Memento where he forgets what he's doing in the middle and he's trying to figure out if he's chasing the other guy or if the other guy is chasing him. You know, the bigger he gets from that, the less he knows about how to express it, or the less at least he's figured out about how to express it visually. Because when you think about Dark Knight, the best action scene was a truck and a motorcycle. It was very linear.
Right.
The bigger he gets, he can't control it. Remember the big climax of the last Batman movie where it's that giant melee brawl and it just looks like kids playing in the background of a fist fight.
Right.
Because he couldn't figure out how to shoot it aggressively.
What you said earlier reminded me, Jenna, of Joel Schumacher. What you said about getting lost in like the big movies. Have you guys ever seen Tigerland? Did you see that one?
Yeah, I liked it a lot.
That's a really, really good movie, and you wouldn't know that it was a Joel Schumacher movie whatsoever. And he did get lost in that same Batman bigness for a little while, whereas he probably should have just been churning out Tigerlands.
Yeah.
Like, that's a great little movie. All right, we're going to cut here, and we're going to come back with a couple questions. See you soon. And now, a movie joke by comedian Anthony Kapfer.
I'm working on a screenplay. It's about a guy that sits in different coffee shops while writing his screenplay. But I'm working on mine at home on a typewriter.
This has been a movie joke by comedian Anthony Kapfer. Visit him at anthonykapfer.com. Kapfer. Rick asks, give some examples of irresponsible filmmaking.
Well, I wrote that whole thing about Wolf of Wall Street and how I thought that it really walked the line. Also, again, about having the director's intentions not being clear enough, I thought, for the audience and for how people responded. Sort of like Wall Street, I think, had a similar effect of you have this terrible guy who's just so charming and the movie portrays him as a hero that a lot of people leave being like, that's the guy, I'm going to be that guy.
So it almost has like people miss the irony aspect, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I get it makes me uncomfortable.
That's like what happened with Scarface, kind of, too.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, but I wouldn't call Scarface irresponsible filmmaking.
Just terrible filmmaking.
No, I love Scarface. I just
Really?
think that the cult of Scarface, you know, it's kind of just, it's an unintended consequence, but I don't think it's the fault of the filmmaker per se.
I think it's very honest. You know, if you're living in some fucking shithole in nowhere, Iowa, or you're living in like a projects tower in fucking Queens, when you watch that, like, why not?
Mm-hmm.
You know, the worst of it is better than the best of what you have.
Right, that's a fair point. I think my example for irresponsible filmmaking would probably be, and I forget his name is escaping me, but the guy who made Baraka and Samsara. I think both of those movies are extremely irresponsible. They're essentially fucking screensavers in movie form. It's not difficult to shoot beautiful things, you know, just straight on. Like if you're going all over the globe finding the most beautiful imagery you can find, it's not difficult to just hit record and capture it.
That's interesting.
You know, it's really like, what are we praising? His ability to go around the world? Like, are we really praising him for his visual prowess? Because he's just capturing things with a high, you know, I actually don't even know if he shot film on the second one. I know he did film on Baraka. Like he shot it like 70 millimeter or something. He might have done the same for Samsara. But are we really just praising a guy who has the ability to go around the world with a 70 millimeter camera and just capture gorgeous imagery?
So what's wrong with that?
It's irresponsible because while he's there, he could be doing so much more, A, visually, B, as far as just like the whole project. Like it gets, those two movies get praised by like sort of the new age community.
You think they're unambitious?
They are unambitious. They're ambitious on a very surface level. They're ambitious in that, yes, he did go around the world and shoot these things, but what does he have to show for it? A bunch of fucking screensavers that don't necessarily even flow well into each other. You know, you watch those movies, there's no real substance there. He hasn't learned anything. There's no wisdom that he's giving us with these images. They're just well shot snapshots of, you know, the entire world, essentially. I think that's irresponsible. I think you can say way more about the world than just that, than just capturing its most beautiful moments around the world. You're not really saying anything. So I think that's irresponsible. John, what do you think is irresponsible as far as filmmaking?
The most irresponsible movie I've ever seen is also the most detestable movie I've ever seen. It's called Killers of the Sea. It's a documentary from 1937, and it's this guy who has a fishing boat. I think it's the Caribbean, and he's just cruising around the Caribbean, and there's this breathless, real newsreel type of narrator in the back who's characterizing this man as a sheriff of the ocean who's out there, I swear to God this is true, protecting the good fish from the bad fish. So what he's doing is he's going around and he's finding dolphins and he's petting them, and then a shark will come by in its native fucking habitat and he'll leap into the water with a big knife and on film, on this documentary for children, just murder this fucking shark and throw its carcass into the sea.
Oh my God.
And then he does it with an octopus at the end, and the narrator the whole time is talking about how it's like this slimy, cowardly demon haunting the sea. Meanwhile, this man is just absolutely devastating a very fragile ecosystem.
Oh, Lord.
And they put it in these theaters, and it was essentially, it was an aspirational thing for these kids. They wanted to go out and be sheriffs of the sea and kill bad animals. And that, this motherfucker, he's talking about these beautiful, good fish. And the reason those giant good fish don't exist anymore is because people like him sport fished all the sharks out of the ocean.
Yeah.
Peter Benchley always said that after he wrote Jaws, he would not have written that book if he knew the effect it was going to have on people, because people just started killing sharks all over the place because they thought of them as enemies.
Right.
But you can't think of nature as having enemies. It has,
good or bad.
Yeah, it has an ecosystem.
That's a morality you're imposing on it that's entirely arbitrary. That's definitely irresponsible.
Yeah,
I'd
it's
never heard of
beyond
that.
arbitrary. It's massively... I mean, I would love to know just the goddamn physical toll that fucking jackass wreaked on the most beautiful ocean on the planet. Just devastated it. And then the movie just throws in this straight up soft shoe minstrel show racism in the middle, just for the hell of it. He's got a there's a black man, like an islander, who's on the boat with him, and it'll occasionally cut to this dude, and they'll have someone overdub him with this real lispy step and fetch it voice.
Oh my God.
Talking about how he's just too lazy to go out into the ocean with his master. And I'm watching, I'm like, I wanted to fist fight the movie. I wanted to find the people who made it. I don't even care if they're now cruising around 90. I just wanted to beat the shit out of them. It was despicable filmmaking. Find it on the internet. Killers of the Sea. Dare you to make it through the whole movie. It took me 3 viewings to finish it.
I was giving some guy shit for just jet setting. Meanwhile, this movie exists. All right, so our next question is, Harry asks, have movie tropes always been around, or are they the result of some iconic moment that sticks? And the example he gives, I guess, is in American Hustle, something about a lamp breaking and everybody walking out in, the smoke of like the lamp breaking or something. I didn't see the movies. I don't know what he's talking about.
I did essentially a long-form research project on this called Shot Context, which was a website where I just put images from films next to each other. I started with kind of this concept that all of this stuff was created. For example, the idea of the cavalry riders rising over the hill to save people, the like cavalry coming over the hill to the rescue. That comes from Seven Samurai. I mean, you can point to the first time anybody ever did that. But a lot of this stuff, there's this sense that it comes from somewhere, but really what you can do is you can backtrack and find earlier, cruder examples of some of these iconic images and these sort of pop arty visual transmissions of an idea that we have. You look at something like, I saw American Hustle and I don't remember that scene, but I'm assuming what he's talking about is like people, like badasses walking out of the smoke, which is, that idea of like people walking away from the explosion without turning around.
Right.
You can point to the first couple of times anybody ever did that.
It's almost a Buster Keaton-y kind of vibe, right? Like that.
Yeah.
The house falls. And
there's a few horror movies from the 40s where you see something, you see a car blow up and you see somebody just walk away without turning back because they caused the explosion. But the thing about them is they get really granular. And you can keep looking and see elements of them earlier and earlier, but not in their constituent whole. So really what happens is you have these ideas that are always sort of floating around. And these sort of visual grammatical symbols for complex ideas. Like this dude's a badass because he's walking away from fire. You end up with these sort of visual shorthands for them. And they're always sort of floating around. But I feel like in a lot of cases, you need a flashpoint moment where somebody does it very well, and then it becomes institutionalized. Like in literature, you have a million stories going back to whatever of like troubled orphans up against the system. But it really wasn't until the 1800s when you had like Jane Eyre and Oliver Twist, when it was done well and it was done red, that they became, instead of just one free-form idea that people use sometimes, it became this institution. And that's when it sort of calcifies into an institution like that.
Well, it's like when genre becomes genre in general.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Those moments, I think you need a flashpoint.
Right.
You need a cause.
Well, it's like when, the first heavy metal bands, it's like, Black Sabbath and like the new wave of British heavy metal, like all those guys, that calcified into an entire genre and is very pinpointable. And it's, really on a music theory level, it comes down to the embracing of like flat fifth stuff and like sort of classical scales, so to speak, and the application of that with like distortion and, some of these galloping sort of rhythms that just come together, and then you have this entire genre of metal that's keeping on going and has all these subgenres that grow from this one little flashpoint moment.
Yeah, but I mean, those elements existed forever. It just took
exactly. It took somebody just sandwiching together.
It's the same thing. I mean, punk. You can find punk songs. The Kinks were doing punk songs. The Who have a few punk songs.
The Beatles, Helter Skelter.
Yeah, and My Gal by The Loving Spoonful. I mean, that's a punk song from like 1963. But it took a moment in the 70s for it to become sort of an intention and an institution and a mode. And that's when it becomes, I hate this word trope, but that's when it becomes something like that.
Trope isn't even the best word for it,
It's visual indexing is what it is, really.
Yeah.
It's putting a definition to an image.
Yeah, and it's not looking at the history of it. Like a lot of those trope sites, it's just cataloging.
Yeah.
It's not, there's nobody leading you through it. That's what I loved about Shot Context. That's how me and John met initially, was that I was just a big fan of the site and reached out to him and we hit it off. And if you guys haven't looked into the John D'Amico deep cuts, go and explore Shot Context. Great site.
Yeah, I think these tropes are really what would make a trope would be just that somebody managed to do it so well that they inspired so many other people. Because as you were saying, if you ask the Beatles who the king of rock and roll is, they're going to say Buddy Holly. If you ask Buddy Holly, he's going to say, and it keeps going and going and going.
That's a good point. Everybody has their flashpoint milestone moment that they can point to, and you could just keep tracing it back, and you could almost can't even find. It just traces back to like a protozoa at a certain point.
Yeah, exactly.
I think with images, though, with film images, you need a moment where you see either a pose or a color scheme or a landscape or something, and it's in the context of the film and on its own. It's done with such clear lines that you give a definition to that pose that might have existed before. Like I'm looking at your Say Anything poster in front of me, and it's the image of Cusack holding up the stereo. And I mean, I'm sure you could sit there and go back and find images of people holding stuff up.
Right.
All throughout, whatever.
And right next to that poster is a Rocky poster with Rocky and his arms in the air, because I just had to put them next to each other because they just seemed like they should just go together.
Yeah, and you have these two images of these two guys with their arms up, but really each of them has, because the image is so strong and so strong in our collective idea of the movies, you have each of these poses now has a definition. That Rocky pose that has a definition. It's not just triumph, but the triumph of an underdog.
Right.
And the Say Anything pose is now, that's a romantic gesture. That's a pose of a romantic gesture. When I'm sure you could go back and you could find that in protest videos. You could find that pose in, I'm sure that's like that. There are things of criminals doing that pose, just being dicks in the street.
It almost feels like hieroglyphics.
Yeah.
Like
yeah, that's a really good way of looking at it.
Guy with arms in the air with holding nothing means underdog triumphing, whereas guy holding object is like a romantic. Like it almost has that.
Whereas guy holding radio in the hieroglyphics means question mark.
Well, that's essentially
means aliens, basically.
Yeah.
That's essentially how hieroglyphics formed, though. It was, you would draw these things out to show them, and then over time you'd keep drawing the same thing to keep meaning the same thing, and then it would sort of mutate, and you would end up with these non-representational glyphs that like kind of look like a thing, but really the same with Japanese and Chinese characters. They started out as pictures of houses, and then they just became these sweeps and these Picasso lines. And it's the same thing with film. You can see every video game now has the same cover of the fucking jacked idiot walking away from the camera with a big gun on his back. And at a certain point, that meant very specific kinds of heroes, and now it just means any fucking idiot who's in a goddamn video game.
And fonts too.
Yeah,
fonts are a perfect example where certain fonts mean something. Like the Impact font didn't mean humor meme until very, very recently, and now suddenly it's this funny thing that you expect on like captions on like images of like cats and stuff. That Impact font with like the black border. And also Comic Sans.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Comic Sans now just means like
over
silliness, just not knowing what font to use kind of thing.
And Helvetica somehow has gone from being an institutional authoritarian font to now this sort of like folksy homemade one, because everybody has sort of reclaimed it.
Yeah, this coolness to that font. And Cooper font would be a good example. The classic 70s like Wet Hot American Summer like titles fonts, and like Louis used it for some stuff too. That was a font of like taking little stamps and like making shirts kind of thing. That was like the bullshit shirt and like the jerk that the kid wears. Like that's a Cooper font. Like it has that kind of 70s early 80s vibe where like if you use it, you're recalling that whether you want to or not. You almost can't use it except in that context. Just like Comic Sans, you can't use it seriously. You have to be sort of winking if you're using it.
It's a good example of all of this. I've been rewatching the Rambo movies, and you remember that shot? Everybody knows that shot in Rambo 2 where he's shirtless and he has the M60 and he's just spraying the bullets. And he looks like an action figure. He's shiny and he's on a desert.
The shininess is perfect.
Yeah, there's these very clear lines.
Almost plastic, yeah.
Yeah, and he's cut against this green helicopter and plain sand desert. It's very bold colors. That same shot is in Rambo 1, in First Blood. There's another shot of him spraying the windows of the police station with an M60, but he's hiding in the shadows. He's wearing all black. And in that film, it's a signal of he's almost the Viet Cong in that film.
Right.
It's this guerrilla warfare preemptive reversal of that sort of like action god, war god image it became in Rambo 2. There's this John Ford movie from the 30s with Boris Karloff where they do the same pose. In that one, it just happens. It really doesn't feel like it has any meaning beyond any other way of standing and firing a gun that anybody has. It's not really charged.
Yeah, they're not paying attention to what they have with it, how iconic it could be. It's just something to use, right?
I don't even know that it's not paying attention to how iconic it could be. It's just their priorities are not for the kind of iconography that Rambo 2 prioritized.
Right.
So you have something like that. It's almost like how Michelangelo said he could find only one sculpture in every slab of marble. It's almost like this. You get these sort of gestures and these images, and they're really only good for one thing. And it takes a long time for filmmakers to figure out what the one thing could be.
That was a good fucking question. Holy shit.
Yeah, that was a good one.
That could have been an episode. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and be sure to subscribe, rate, comment, do all that. That really helps on iTunes. John D'Amico's taking off his headphones that he hates. He hates those headphones.
Absolutely can't stand them.
He's got something against headphones. Me and Jenna like headphones, right?
Yeah, I'm down.
Yeah, headphones are great. But our boy John doesn't like wearing them when he's doing the episode.
No, not for me.
Yeah. See, now you're talking all low. When you had the headphones on, everybody could hear you clearly. All right, guys. Keep listening. Keep going back. Check out some episodes you might have missed. Support the show. Any parting words, Jenna?
Just remember that just because John and Cody and I fight, it doesn't mean that we don't love each other and that we don't love you,
yes,
listener.
Mommy and Daddy love each other very much. They just sometimes disagree, and that's okay. And they'll still be here, and that's all right. Any parting words, John?
I got nothing. Have a good week, everybody.
No movies to recommend? Not like one that you can stick in?
Yeah, First Blood. Watch Rambo 1 again.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
Real good movie.
My parting words, I guess that I love you all equally. Every single one of you.
More than Jenna does.
That's right. Goodbye, guys.